With the biggest story of the day, and that is the news that DeWanna Bonner is no longer with the Indiana Fever. It was reported last night that DeWanna Bonner had no intentions on returning to the Indiana Fever, and then the news broke today that the Indiana Fever had indeed.
DeWanna Bonner thought she could just quit on the Indiana Fever and waltz into any team she wanted, but reality just hit her like a freight train. Teams across the WNBA are refusing to touch her with a 10-foot pole after seeing how she abandoned her teammates mid-season. The karma is hitting different right now. Do you think DeWanna Bonner deserves to be blacklisted by other teams after what she did? Folks, we are witnessing one of the most satisfying cases of instant karma in WNBA history right now. DeWanna Bonner decided she could just quit on the Indiana Fever, abandoned Caitlin Clark and her teammates mid-season, and somehow thought teams would be lining up to sign her. Well, guess what? Reality just served her a cold dish of consequences, and it's absolutely delicious to watch.
Statement. She said, "I want to sincerely thank the Indiana Fever for the opportunity to be part of the Fever franchise. Despite our shared goals and excitement heading into the season, I felt the fit did not work out, and I appreciate the organization's willingness to grant my request to move on, particularly at this point in my career. I wish the Fever great success as they continue to build around this dynamic group of young players."
Here's what's happening that makes this whole situation even more embarrassing for Bonner. She's been waived by the Fever, which means any team in the league could claim her off waivers and she'd get her full salary, all $200,000 of it.
If another team claims her off the waivers, she gets her full salary. She gets her full salary if another team claims her off the waivers.
That's a lot of money in the WNBA, and you'd think teams would be interested in a veteran player with championship experience, right? Wrong.
I think that makes DeWanna Bonner look really, really bad. It makes DB look really, really bad. And it's the fact that she has told all other teams, other than the Mercury, don't sign her.
Bonner has reportedly told every single team in the league except the Phoenix Mercury not to even bother trying to sign her. She's basically acting like she's a free agent who gets to pick and choose where she goes, when in reality, she's damaged goods that nobody wants. She's pulling a Ben Simmons, sitting out and demanding to only go to one specific team while ignoring the fact that she's under contract. The absolute audacity of this woman is breathtaking. She signs with Indiana, takes their money, gets all the benefits of being associated with the biggest story in women's basketball, poses for Sports Illustrated covers, plays in front of sold-out crowds, and then, when things don't go exactly her way, she just quits. And now she thinks she can dictate terms to the entire league about where she'll play next.
And look, I understand that's where she wants to go. Why didn't she go there in the summer? We know why, because she couldn't have got her max contract. And by the way, people are like, oh, they can give her the minimum. No, they can't. The Phoenix Mercury can give her a prorated $80,000 salary for the rest of the year. So she's only going to lose about 30K-ish. And she's going to lose about 40, 50K. Whereas they would have been only able to sign her earlier on. Well, they would only be able to sign her for nothing. Because again, we can't forget as well, the Phoenix Mercury cut Sevgi Uzun. The Phoenix Mercury have a bunch of players signed on hardships and a bunch of players that they can cut. Like they literally cap space magicked up. And as soon as cap space magics up for the the Phoenix Mercury.
But here's where it gets really embarrassing for Bonner. The Phoenix Mercury, the one team she actually wants to join, reportedly aren't even sure they want her anymore. Think about that for a second. She burned bridges with Indiana specifically to force her way to Phoenix, and now Phoenix is looking at this situation thinking, do we really want someone who quits on their team when things get tough? The Mercury are currently playing well with their young core of role players who have bought into their system. They're winning games with players who actually want to be there, who aren't going to abandon the team the moment something doesn't go their way. Why would they want to disrupt that chemistry for someone who just proved she's unreliable? Let's talk about the business side of this disaster. If another team had claimed Bonner off waivers, she would have gotten her full $200,000 salary. But because she's demanding to only go to Phoenix, she's probably going to end up signing for a prorated veteran minimum of around $80,000. She's literally costing herself over $100,000 because she thinks she can control where she plays after quitting on her team. The fact that every other team in the league is staying away from her tells you everything you need to know about how this situation is being viewed around the league. GMs and coaches are looking at what Bonner did and thinking, if she'll quit on Indiana when they need her most, what's to stop her from quitting on us? That's not the kind of reputation you want to have in a league with only 144 roster spots. This whole situation makes Bonner look incredibly short-sighted and selfish. If she really wanted to play for Phoenix so badly, why didn't she just sign with them in the first place during free agency? Everyone knew the Mercury were interested in her. Everyone knew she had a relationship with Alyssa Thomas. Everyone knew that's where she wanted to be. But she chose the money and spotlight that came with signing in Indiana instead. Now she's trying to have it both ways, take Indiana's money and exposure, then force her way to Phoenix when it's convenient for her. That's not how professional sports work, and it's definitely not how you build trust with organizations and teammates. The worst part is how this affects Caitlin Clark and the other young players on the Fever. These players looked up to Bonner as a veteran leader, someone who was supposed to guide them through the pressure of playing for the league's most scrutinized franchise. Instead, she showed them that when things get tough, you can just quit and walk away. That's not leadership. That's abandonment. Clark specifically was excited about playing with Bonner. You could see it in preseason how much effort Clark put into building chemistry with her. For one of the first times in Clark's career, she's essentially been told by someone she admired that they didn't want to play with her. That has to sting, and it probably explains some of Clark's recent struggles on the court. The Jimmy Butler comparisons are perfect because what Butler did in Philadelphia was widely criticized as unprofessional and damaging to team culture. The difference is Butler was at least still a top-level player when he forced his way out. Bonner is 36 years old and clearly on the decline, yet she's acting like she has the leverage of a superstar. Ben Simmons is another perfect comparison because he also sat out and demanded a trade while still under contract. The difference is Simmons was younger and theoretically had more value. Bonner is near the end of her career and just showed every team in the league that she's willing to quit when things don't go her way.
What makes this even more ridiculous is that Bonner's complaints about her role in Indiana seem completely overblown. She was a starter. She was getting significant minutes. She was being featured in the offense. Yes, the team wasn't playing as well as expected, but that's not a reason to abandon your teammates mid-season. The fact that she's telling teams not to claim her off waivers shows how entitled she's become. She thinks she can control the entire process, dictate terms to the league, and force her way to exactly where she wants to go without any consequences. Well, the consequences are here, and they're not pretty. Teams around the league are basically treating Bonner like she has the plague right now. No GM wants to be the one who brings in a player who just proves she'll quit on her team when things get challenging. That's toxic to team culture and sends a terrible message to other players on the roster. The Mercury's hesitation to sign her is particularly telling because they're the one team she actually wants to join. If even they're having second thoughts about bringing in someone who forced their way out of their previous situation, that tells you how bad this looks from the outside. Phoenix is also in a good spot right now with their current roster construction. They have young players who are contributing and buying into their system. Why would they want to potentially disrupt that for a 36-year-old who just quit on her last team? It doesn't make basketball sense or cultural sense. The financial aspect makes this even more embarrassing for Bonner. She's going to lose significant money because of her decision to force her way out. Instead of honoring her contract and getting her full salary, she's probably going to end up making half of what she was supposed to make this season. The timing of her departure also makes it worse. This happened right when Caitlin Clark was coming back from injury, right when the team needed veteran leadership the most. Instead of stepping up and helping the team through a challenging period, Bonner chose to create more chaos and drama. The media's reluctance to criticize Bonner for this decision is also frustrating but predictable. WNBA media tends to protect players even when they make obviously wrong decisions. But fans aren't buying it. They can see this situation for what it is, which is a veteran player selfishly abandoning her team. The precedent this sets is terrible for the league. If players can just quit mid-season and force their way to their preferred destination without real consequences, why would anyone honor their contracts? Why would teams invest in building culture and chemistry if players can just leave whenever they want?
Bonner's legacy is going to be permanently damaged by this decision. Instead of being remembered as a solid veteran who contributed to multiple teams throughout her career, she's going to be remembered as the player who quit on Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever when they needed her most. The fact that she's essentially holding out for one specific team while under contract shows a complete disregard for professionalism. She's acting like she's bigger than the league, bigger than contracts, bigger than commitments. That's not how professional sports work, and it's definitely not how you maintain respect around the league. The silence from other veteran players is also telling. Usually when a player gets treated unfairly by an organization, other players speak up in support. The fact that nobody is defending Bonner's decision tells you how it's being viewed by her peers. Teams are probably also concerned about the message signing Bonner would send to their current players. If you reward someone for quitting on their team, what does that tell your own players about commitment and professionalism? It's a terrible precedent to set. The Mercury would also have to cut another player to make room for Bonner, which means disrupting their current roster construction for someone who just proved she's unreliable. That's a lot of risk for very little reward, especially given Bonner's age and declining production. This whole situation is a masterclass in how not to handle being unhappy with your professional situation. Instead of working through problems, communicating with coaches and management, or simply honoring your contract, Bonner chose the nuclear option and burned everything down. The karma of this situation is almost too perfect. Bonner thought she could manipulate the system to get exactly what she wanted. And instead, she's finding out that actions have consequences. Teams don't want players who quit. Coaches don't want players who abandon their teammates. And GMs don't want to invest in someone who might just walk away when things get tough. What's really pathetic is how Bonner is trying to spin this as a basketball decision, when everyone can see it's really about her wanting to play with her girlfriend, Alyssa Thomas, in Phoenix. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be close to your partner, but don't lie about it, and don't abandon your professional commitments to make it happen. The fact that she waited until Phoenix had cap space available before suddenly deciding she couldn't play for Indiana anymore is suspicious as hell. It's almost like this was planned from the beginning. Take Indiana's money and spotlight until Phoenix could afford her, then force a move. That's not just unprofessional, it's borderline fraudulent. The fact that she's willing to sit out and lose money just to force her way to Phoenix shows how little she actually cares about basketball at this point. If she really loved the game and wanted to compete, she'd honor her contract and try to make things work in Indiana. Instead, she's choosing personal desires over professional obligations. Teams are also probably concerned about the precedent this sets for other players. If Bonner gets rewarded for this behavior by getting to go where she wants, what stops other players from doing the same thing? It could create a domino effect of players abandoning their teams whenever they're unhappy. The WNBA can't afford to have players treating contracts like suggestions. The league is still building its credibility and reputation, and having veteran players quit mid-season sends a terrible message about the professionalism and stability of the organization. Bonner's supporters are trying to frame this as her standing up for herself and making a business decision, but that's complete nonsense. A business decision would be honoring your contract, being professional, and handling your issues privately. This is the opposite of a business decision. It's an emotional tantrum that's going to cost her money and reputation. The fact that even Phoenix seems hesitant to sign her tells you everything you need to know about how toxic this situation has become. When the team you're trying to force your way to doesn't even want you anymore, you've completely miscalculated the situation. The irony is that Bonner probably would have ended up in Phoenix eventually anyway if she had just been patient and professional. Players move around the league all the time through trades and free agency. Instead, she chose the nuclear option and potentially burned bridges with everyone. This situation is also terrible for the Indiana Fever organization. They invested significant money and resources in Bonner, built marketing campaigns around her, and now they look foolish for trusting someone who abandoned them at the first sign of adversity. It makes it harder for them to attract other veteran free agents in the future. The young players on the Fever roster are probably looking at this situation and learning all the wrong lessons. Instead of seeing how a veteran handles adversity with grace and professionalism, they're seeing someone cut and run when things get tough. That's not the kind of mentorship they need. Caitlin Clark has handled this situation with more class and maturity than Bonner, despite being decades younger and far less experienced. Clark is still showing up, still playing hard, still trying to lead her team despite being abandoned by someone she looked up to. That's real leadership.
The business implications for Bonner are going to extend beyond this season, too. Future teams are going to remember how she handled this situation when they're considering whether to sign her. Why would you invest in someone who might just quit on you when things don't go their way? The fact that Bonner thought she could control the entire process and dictate terms to the league shows how out of touch she's become. The WNBA isn't her personal playground where she gets to make demands and have everyone cater to her wishes. She's finding out the hard way that actions have consequences. DeWanna Bonner really thought she could quit on her team and still have the whole league begging to sign her. Reality just taught her a harsh lesson about consequences and reputation. Sometimes karma works exactly how it should. What do you think about teams avoiding Bonner? Drop your thoughts below, smash that like button, and subscribe for more WNBA drama.